It's all about lots of butter, lots of cream, really caramelized sugar, and a pretty good hit of sea salt. Welcome to Helliemae Salt Caramels. I think everybody has that little dream in their heart, like, oh, I would like to open a restaurant or food business. But what was really the thing that made the difference for me was getting me to take the leap. It was my husband saying, you ought to do this. You make these caramels, people are crazy about them, they hide them from their coworkers, they freak out when you bring them to the office. You should give it a try. My name's Elena, and I own Helliemae Salt Caramels. The thing that I love in a caramel is for it to be really dark and really intense. Helliemae as a brand is all about intensity of flavor. Big flavors that knock you back and kind of leave you reeling a little bit. Because my name's Ellen, people would call me Helliemae. But when I was thinking about what to call the caramel business, I wanted this sense of kind of a little bit old-fashioned, but also a little bit more modern. And if you put an H in front and you have Helliemae Salt Caramels, I don't know, it just feels a little bit more like me. We are in Lakewood, Colorado, in my commercial kitchen, which I sometimes call the Helliemae factory. Caramels are pretty labor-intensive because they're a small batch product, because they're handcrafted. It's just me at the stove making caramels. The foundation of Helliemae and the majority of the caramels that people buy is the classic salt flavor. It's a very traditional butter caramel, much darker and more intense than most caramels, finished with a crunchy, flaky sea salt. Making Helliemae salt caramels starts with cane sugar, pure water, a little bit of corn syrup to prevent crystallization. Put it on the stove, fire the heat up to caramelize the sugar. At the same time, measure out the unsalted butter, heavy cream, put that over gentle, low heat to bring it up to a warm temperature. One of the things that's a little bit different about these caramels from other ones is that they have a lot more butter and a lot more cream, so they're very creamy and soft and fresh when you bite into them. It's important that you have the best butter and the best cream possible. So I use unsalted butter, hormone-free, really high quality, and then for the cream I use hormone-free cream, and it's not even just heavy cream, it's what's called manufacturing cream, so it has an even higher fat content than most heavy cream. So now that it's been heating for about 20 minutes on the stove, the thickness of this sugar and corn syrup and water mixture is much thicker because a lot of the water has bubbled off, so it's much more viscous. The first period of time is really all about losing the water. Now we're going to see the sugar actually start to caramelize. You can see it's getting just a little bit yellow, and the bubbles are getting really big and slow. Okay, we're there. So I'm going to turn off the heat, and now I'm going to pour all of the melted butter and the melted cream in. That's going to bubble up pretty dramatically. I just poured in a bunch of butter and cream, so I want to make sure that it's really well distributed throughout here. I don't want little pockets of butter in the caramel. When I used to be in consulting, no one ever said, hey, can I come over and watch you sell consulting services on the phone? But now that I'm in the food business, they all want to come over and hang out. Hey, can I come watch you make caramels? Sure. Because it's interesting. Everybody can relate to food. It's this very tangible, tactile thing that is also kind of emotional. And, you know, it's not like I'm making preserved fish. Caramels smell pretty good when they're cooking. Now that I've added the butter and the cream, I'm not so concerned about the color because I can rely on temperature as my indicator for when they're ready. So I'm going to take the temperature of this mixture periodically, and I'm aiming for about 235, 240 degrees. That's going to give me a caramel that's soft, but still holds its shape and is a nice cohesive candy. Once you cook the candy, you pour the hot bubbling caramel into silicone molds. Leave them to cool for about 6 hours, depending, again, on the temperature of the room. Because I make my caramel with so much butterfat, there's so much butter and so much cream, they're very soft. They have this crystalline sea salt from Cyprus sprinkled on top. When you bite into them, you get a nice textural contrast between the crunch of the salt and then the creaminess of the caramel. And the salt has this little bit of a saline sweetness almost about it, which interacts really nicely with the deep, dark caramel flavor of the caramels themselves. You bite through the crunch of the salt, and then there's the creamy caramel. These caramels are molded and then wrapped by hand and packaged by hand in boxes. So Helliemae salt caramels year-round has 3 varieties: classic salt, coffee, and cardamom. I also do seasonal varieties. In the fall, apple; at Christmas time, candy cane; and in the spring, jasmine tea. When you bite into a Helliemae's caramel, you may get notes of chocolate and coffee and whiskey. That's just because the caramel is so dark and the sugar has been caramelized so much. So if you looked at my history, you would not say, oh, this is a food person. I went to college and studied political science. I worked as a demographer. I went to business school. I was a consultant. But all throughout, I've always liked food. I've always liked how it brought people together. I was never a particularly good cook, and about 15 years ago, I decided to learn to cook. And that kind of started me along the path that ended up with Helliemaes now. When people ask me about, what is it in your background that really made you think I'm going to start this caramel business, my answer is nothing. What it took was my husband saying to me in the car, you gotta sell those caramels. Seriously, it would have never occurred to me if he had not pointed that out.